Hello everyone, welcome to AWS Tutorials. In AWS Tutorials, we provide workshops and exercises to learn about AWS services. These workshops and exercises are published to our website aws-dojo.com. Today, I'm going to talk about some of the recent announcements or enhancements which came into AWS Glue Studio. And these enhancements are actually going to improve your overall job performance and your productivity, and I'm going to talk about that in this session. So just to give a small introduction about AWS Glue Studio, this is a graphical interface which is used to create a Glue job in a graphical and interactive way. So you are given kind of a canvas where you can drag and drop different types of ETL activities, and then you construct your business logic for the ETL job. Again, I'm not going to talk about Glue Studio in detail because I have many other tutorials where I have discussed various aspects of Glue Studio in detail. You might want to search for Glue Studio videos in my channel, and you will definitely find my earlier videos and get to know more about Glue Studio. Today I am going to focus on these three new features more and talk about when you should be using it and how it's going to improve your overall experience and productivity. So let's talk about the challenge number one first. There have been scenario where you have to read data from S3 bucket, and it's a very common scenario that you read data from the S3 bucket. Now, there were two approaches to it. One approach was that you read data from the S3 bucket directly. So in your Glue Studio, you use your data source node and you read data from the S3 bucket directly. And since you are reading data from the S3 bucket directly, you were not aware of the schema of the data. So you were manually creating the schema of the data, and then you were actually using that created schema for your data transformation purposes in the rest of the business logic. Other approach, which is in my opinion is a preferred approach actually, and in fact I recommend it, is you put your data into S3 bucket, and then you use a Glue crawler to catalog your data, and then you use a Glue catalog as a source for your data source node in Glue Studio job. And in that case, since your Glue catalog has already generated your schema, your data source node will come to know the schema already. So it gets an output schema already generated for your data source. So in the second approach here, you don't need to generate any schema or create any schema. The schema is already created for you because your data source node will simply pick that schema from your Glue catalog. So generally, these two approaches are taken. In first one, you create your schema from the scratch, and the second one, schema gets generated. Now, there are many, and again, I told you, the second approach, in my opinion, is the preferred approach. I mean, that's what I would recommend as an approach. But many times it happens that you cannot generate Glue catalog. And reason could be anything. Probably you're using some other solution for cataloging, or it could be that your bucket is not in your control, it is somewhere else, and you have no way to generate the schema for that bucket. And in that case, actually, you were facing a challenge because then you are actually reading then you have to manually define the schema, and it is still okay if your schema is simple, but if the document is complex, JSON type, then it becomes a little complex to create that schema. And this feature of Infer S3 Schema is something addresses this particular challenge. So with this feature in Glue Studio, actually you can read data from S3 bucket, and it can generate its own schema, and it can also infer the schema of the data in the S3 bucket and can generate the output schema. Again, guys, I will not say this should be your preferred way of working, because I have talked about it many times that you should be cataloging your data, because if you catalog your data, then your data becomes discoverable and searchable. Okay, but again, for those specific scenarios where you cannot catalog the data but still you want schema to be generated, and in that case you can use this new feature, Infer S3 Schema, where actually your data source node can not only read data from S3 bucket, but it can also generate the schema by inferring it. And the way it works is that you use this Infer Schema button over here. So once you configure your source bucket, you click on this Infer Schema and it will simply generate a schema for you. There are a few more configuration you can do. You can talk about your you can configure here your partition predicate to tell your partition columns here. You can also ask your Glue Studio to automatically choose one of the sample files or one of the data files from the source, or you can tell a particular file to be used for schema generation. All those configurations are there. But bottom line is that when you're using the Infer Schema button in your data source node, actually you can generate your own schema. You can generate the schema of the S3 data, and that is done based on the inference of your schema in your data in S3 data. Now, it could happen that the schema generated, you don't like it. I mean, you don't like in the sense most of the time you will not agree with the data types. You will say, okay, why this is a long, this should be, for instance, a big integer, or things like that. Why this is a date time, this should be a string. Those kind of things can happen. In that case, you have a full access and full feature to go and change the schema. So you can generate the schema, and then if you don't like it, certain part of it, you can always go and change the schema. But this is a fantastic new feature where you can not only read data from the S3 bucket, but you can also generate a schema of that data, and then you can use that generated schema in the rest of the rest of the ETL business process, in the rest of the ETL business logic for data transformation. So that's the feature number 1. Now let's move on to challenge number 2. Now, since cataloging is very important, so when you write your data at the target, you want to also catalog that data. So you have a source data which you read, and then you did some transformation, and then you wrote the data at the destination, and then you want that data to be cataloged again. Now, normally the flow was that you, for instance, read data from the S3 bucket. I'm just giving example with S3 bucket in this case as a source, but source could be from somewhere else. So you read data from the S3 bucket, and then you did some transformation, and after that you're using this data target node to write to an S3 bucket. Now, in order to catalog this data, you were then using the crawler on this target S3 location to catalog the data. And this crawler was either running based on schedule, or you will sometime also use events or make a call to the crawler API to start the crawler. Those things people used to do. So, the approach of generating, cataloging the target data was, once your data target node writes data to the S3 bucket, you then use a crawler to catalog it. And now this whole flow has been, well, it works, to be honest. And yeah, I mean, this I have done 100 times in my implementations. But this has been simplified. And that's where your second feature comes to the play, which is catalog target feature. In this feature, what you can do, when you have read data from the S3 bucket, and then you're using this data target node to write the target data, You can configure your data target node to also generate catalog at the same time. So not only write data to the S3 bucket, but immediately after that, generate the catalog. So you don't need to configure any separate crawler and worry about scheduling it or calling it calling it based on event or API call to run the crawler. That was a little pain to do unless you are using a workflow like a Glue workflow. But now this whole thing has been simplified, and the way it has been simplified is that your data target node has a configuration to generate the catalog of the target data it is writing. And that is done by this particular configuration over here, where you can select, you can select to not to catalog the data, or you want to, or you can select to catalog the data, and you can select whether you update schema every time or don't update or keep existing schema. You can also configure your partition keys over here for your target data. Again, just all you need to do is that in your data target node is that along with the location in your S3 bucket, you can also configure that I want to update the data catalog for this generated data or created data, and then it will do automatic cataloging for you. So it's going to save you a good amount of time which you use to configure your crawler and somehow orchestrate it after the Glue job. Okay, so that's the second feature, which is definitely going to save a lot of your time when you're writing the Glue jobs. And the third one is there have been people who has been using this Spark SQL for very long time. So many people are using Spark SQL for transformation, and they're used to using SQL kind of construct, SQL kind of query for the transformation. And if you want to use the same thing into Glue Studio, that was not possible till recently. So the new feature is that if you want to use your Spark SQL for data transformation into Glue Studio job, that is now possible. And the way it is possible is that they have provided a new type of transformation that is called SQL code-based transformation. So what you do in that transformation is that you simply say that this is my data set, which is coming, this is your data set coming from the previous data frame or previous dynamic frame which was created by one of the previous nodes. And then on that data set, you can perform your SQL code or Spark SQL query over here. So again, as I said, that this is especially for those people who love to use Spark SQL for transformation and they want to leverage the same feature inside Glue Studio job. Now they can use this transform SQL code node to run a Spark SQL query to transform the data. Okay, so that's the third feature. So three features: you can infer the data reading from the S3 bucket, you can write data to the target location and catalog at the same time, and third one is that you can also do a Spark SQL transformation. Now, having talked about all these three features, what are we going to build today? So what I'm going to build today is that we will create a Glue job using Glue Studio, where we'll read data from the S3 bucket, we will infer the schema, we will generate the schema, then we'll use Spark SQL transformation node to do a small transformation, and then we will write the transform data back to the S3 bucket in a different location, and then we will also catalog that data at the same time using Glue job. So all three features we are going to put into this whole scenario end to end. So in this scenario, you will get a test of all three features one by one. In order to do this exercise or this hands-on lab, we have created an exercise and it is published to our website aws-dojo.com. Now I'm going to walk you through the steps of the exercise and post that you can do this exercise on your own to get hands-on experience of using these features with Glue Studio. So let's jump to the exercise. So here's the exercise which is published to our website aws-dojo.com. So these are the steps you need to perform to complete the exercise. The first step is prerequisite, where it says you need to have an AWS account in order to create this workshop, this exercise. And if you don't have AWS account, you might want to use this link to create the account. Then we create an IAM role for the Glue, which is used by the actually Glue job to authorize the call to the AWS services. So what we do is that we go to IAM management console, say we want to create an IAM role for the Glue, and then with this give this one a power user access just to keep things simple, and then I give this role a nice name and I create the role. So role is created. Now we create S3 bucket. So in S3 bucket, actually we create an S3 bucket, and then in the S3 bucket we create some source data, some target data, some source folder and target folder. In the source folder, we put this sales.csv file as a source data actually. So you can use this link to download the CSV file. So we simply upload this sales.csv file to the source folder, and the idea is that the Glue job will process this sales.csv file and it will write the output to this target folder. So our S3 bucket is also configured. Now, since our Glue job is not only going to write the target file, but it's also going to catalog. So in order to facilitate that, we will have a Glue database created. So we simply go to the Glue management console and simply create one Glue database. Now our all prerequisites are in place. Now we can start writing the Glue job in the studio. So what we do is that we go to the Glue Studio, and in the Glue Studio we say we want to start a blank graph. Once the job template is loaded, or job template is loaded, we give this job a nice name, and then we also assign it the IAM role we created earlier, and we save the job. Now we go and graphically configure this job. So first thing is that we need to read from the S3 bucket. So we go to the source nodes, and then we say we want to read from the S3 bucket. And then you put that data source node over here. You give it a name. You're reading from the S3, and then you start configuring the data source property. So you say, okay, I'm reading from the S3 bucket. This is my location of the CSV file. It is a CSV file, comma separated, and then you say my first line of the file contains my column headers, which is the case in this particular file, and then you simply say I want to infer the schema. So click on the infer schema, and when you click on the infer schema, it automatically generates a schema for you based on the CSV file format. And again, as I told you, that you might not like certain things here. For instance, this price is a choice, or sales is a choice. You might want to say, oh, this is not a choice, this is an integer, for instance, right? You can always click on this edit button over here, and you can change that. But by default, Glue, the data source node, actually infers your data, and based on that, it generates a schema. In this case, I'm saying, okay, I agree with this schema and I'm moving forward. Now I want to perform the transformation using the Spark SQL. So for that, we go to this transform node and say we want to use Spark SQL code-based transformation. So we simply put Spark SQL code here. It has automatically configured to say Spark SQL saying that I'm going to take data from the read source. So whatever data is coming from the read source, the Spark SQL will take as an input. Then we go to this transform tab over here for this Spark SQL, and here we are saying that I want to, for instance, do a SQL transformation. So here I'm saying that I'm interested in a product line and sum of the quantity ordered as total quantity from this data source, which is the data coming from the S3 bucket, group by product line. So you can see I'm running a simple group by query, but any of the Spark SQL supported query you can run over here to perform your transformation. So simple. I'm getting the sum of quantity ordered per product line, and this I want to write as an output and to the S3 bucket. So this is my transformation node. My transformation node is ready. Now I'm saying that okay, fine, I want to write data, and for that we click on this target, and S3 bucket is my write location, and then I give this one a nice name. You can see here the parent node is Spark SQL. That means whatever data coming out of Spark SQL node, that it will take as an input. And then we go to this data target properties for S3. Here we are saying that okay, I want to keep my target data in CSV format. I don't want any compression, and I want my target location to be this folder, or this folder in the S3 bucket. And then here we go, we say, you know what, I want to generate the schema. I want to generate I want to catalog the data. So whatever transform data I'm writing back to S3 bucket, now I want to catalog it. So you select that option. And after selecting that option, actually, when select that option, you have to also tell which database, of course, you want to catalog and what is the table name you are going to give. So you have to provide the database and table name both. And then, yeah, you simply save it. So, you know, we already created a database earlier. And what this node is going to do, it is going to actually catalog the data as a product sales table in this Dojo database. So we simply save, our job is ready. So we read, we transformed, and we write back with cataloging. So we simply save this job, and once it is saved, we simply run the job. And it will take a while to run, well, not very long, but once the run is successful, you can go to the target S3 bucket, and you can, this is your target S3 bucket. You can in fact there see your data file written, and if you go to the Glue catalog, Glue console page, you can see a product sales table generated for you, created for you under the Dojo database, and this is the schema created based on the output of the target file. Okay, and here we go in the S3 bucket. We have also got our files created. So you saw all three steps of the new features where you read data from the S3 bucket, you infer the schema to generate an output schema, then you use Spark SQL query to transform the data, and then we use this target node to write data back to S3 bucket, and when writing to S3 bucket, we also configured it to catalog the data. We saw all three in action, and that's very much where the exercise finishes. You can then, on the next step, go and clean up all the resources so that you don't incur any cost post this exercise. So that was all for this tutorial today, guys. Hope you like the video, and if you like, please click on the like button. Please subscribe to my channel. There are many other similar workshops and exercises which you can use to learn about AWS services. I will highly encourage you to visit our website aws-dojo.com to learn about those. To use these exercises and workshop to learn about AWS services. We always look forward to your feedback for any kind of improvements or any mistake we did which we want to correct, or any new content you request for, or any follow-up question you have for one of our sessions. In any of those cases, you can reach out to us through YouTube comment section, or you can also click on the contact us tab over here, and you can provide your feedback from the through email as well, actually. We look forward to your feedback to improve our content, to make new content, and have a discussion and interaction with you. I promise to come back with another video in a week's time. In the meantime, please stay safe and have a nice day. Bye-bye.